Madison, an heiress to a great fortune, meets a mysterious gardener, Jake, who hides a dark secret from his past. As they grow closer, a deep bond forms, but the shadows of Jake's past threaten to destroy everything. Can love overcome the secrets and danger that follow him? If you love intense love stories filled with mystery, this video is for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional and surprising stories. Madison Carter was born into one of the wealthiest and most powerful families in California. Her childhood was marked by luxurious mansions, glamorous parties, and a life that many would consider a dream. The only child of a real estate magnate, she never lacked material things, but something always seemed to be missing from her heart. The pressure to be perfect, to fit into the high society standard of Los Angeles, weighed heavily on her shoulders. Nothing felt real in a world where everyone wore fake smiles and kept well-hidden secrets. She lived in a vast estate on the outskirts of Malibu, where the waves gently lapped at the family's private beaches. Surrounded by luxury, Madison still felt lost, as though she were living a life that wasn't truly hers. Her parents were more concerned with business and appearances than with her happiness. She longed for something simpler, something real. It was on a spring afternoon as she walked through the estate that she encountered him for the first time. Jake was there, in the middle of the vast garden, tending to the plants with a silent grace. He didn't look like anyone in her social circle. His dark hair and deep eyes reflected the wild nature of someone who had grown up far from luxury and ostentation. Jake was the gardener at the Carter estate, but he seemed to be much more than that. His calloused hands, yet delicate at the same time, demonstrated an intimate connection with the earth. Madison watched him from afar, intrigued by the calm he exuded, something she had never found in her own life. She was used to being at the center of attention, but she had never felt so drawn to someone so simple, and yet so mysterious. On a warm Sunday afternoon, Madison decided to approach him. She walked up with a trivial excuse, as though looking for a reason to start a conversation. "Could you help me pick some flowers for tonight's dinner?" Jake looked at her for a moment, as if assessing before agreeing. There wasn't a single sign of subordination in his stance. He simply treated her like anyone else. As their conversation unfolded, Madison became more fascinated. Jake didn't talk much about himself, but his presence spoke louder than 1,000 words could. It was as if he knew something profound about the world, yet preferred to keep it to himself. Something in her, something inexplicable, made her see him not just as the simple gardener, but as an enigma. She felt a tension in the air, a kind of silent attraction, almost forbidden. "Why did you choose this path?" she asked, unaware that the answer would be more than simple. Jake looked at her with a gaze that seemed to transcend time and space. "Sometimes it's in the silence of the earth that we find the peace the world can never give us." As the weeks passed, Madison found herself returning to the garden more frequently. Each time she would find a reason, no matter how small, to visit Jake while he worked. Whether it was to ask about the flowers or inquire about a new plant, she became more comfortable in his presence, though she never fully understood why. He never tried to impress her with grand words or gestures, and somehow that made her feel more at ease than she'd ever been around anyone before. Jake, on the other hand, remained respectful but distant. He wasn't a man who engaged in idle conversation, nor did he seek to be noticed by those who lived in the world of opulence and privilege. He had his reasons for keeping a low profile, reasons that he had never shared with Madison. But the truth was he'd been noticing her as well. It wasn't the wealth that drew him in, it was the vulnerability he saw beneath her perfectly manicured surface. One day, after a long conversation about gardening, Madison found herself staring at Jake, her thoughts drifting. "You're different," she said quietly, almost to herself. Jake smiled gently, wiping the sweat from his brow. "How do you mean?" Madison hesitated, unsure if she should speak the truth or hold back. "You're not like the others I know. You don't try to impress me or act like you're someone you're not." Jake's expression softened. "I don't see the point in pretending," he replied, his voice low and calm. "Life's simpler when you just are who you are." She was silent for a moment, struck by how deeply his words resonated with her. Madison felt a pull in her chest, an unfamiliar yearning that made her question everything about her life up until that point. Could there really be a life outside the constraints of wealth and expectation? And could Jake be the person to show her? That night, Madison couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the calm in Jake's eyes, the quiet confidence that came from knowing who he was. He had something she'd never known, something she'd always wanted but hadn't realized until now. Peace. The next few days passed in a haze of quiet tension. Madison couldn't stop thinking about Jake's cryptic words. People change. They have to. Sometimes, it's the only way to survive. She replayed his statement over and over in her mind, trying to make sense of it, but the more she thought about it, the more questions it raised. Why was he so guarded? What was he running from? Madison tried to push it out of her mind, but every time she stepped into the garden, there he was. Jake, silently working, his calm presence almost too peaceful to be true. She was torn between wanting to know more and feeling that somehow Jake was the one person who didn't need to be scrutinized, but curiosity, like a fire, burned inside her. It was late one afternoon when the opportunity came. Madison was wandering near the edge of the property, lost in thought, when she noticed Jake standing by the garden gate, looking out toward the horizon. He seemed distant, more than usual, his gaze fixed on something far beyond the estate, as though he was searching for something or someone that wasn't there. Madison approached him slowly, not wanting to startle him but needing answers. She stopped a few feet away, hesitating before speaking. "Jake," she called softly, "what happened to you? What is it that you're running from?" For a long time he didn't respond. The only sound was the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. Madison waited, her heart pounding in her chest. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened. Finally, he turned to face her, his eyes darker than before, shadowed with a past he hadn't shared. "I'm not running from anything," Jake said, his voice low and tight. I'm trying to forget." His words hung in the air, thick with emotion. Sometimes it's easier to leave the past behind and start fresh. Madison felt a pang of empathy. She could see the weight in his eyes, the way the past still clung to him, despite his best efforts to bury it. She took a step closer, her hand reaching out as if to offer comfort. But before she could say anything, Jake took a step back, putting distance between them. "I'm sorry, Madison," Jake said, his voice cracking slightly. "You don't need to know this. It's not your problem." Madison watched as he turned away, his figure retreating into the shadows of the garden. She stood there, frozen, feeling both the sting of his rejection and the pull of his pain. Something deep inside told her that Jake's past wasn't just something he was running from. It was something that had shaped him into the man he was today, and it was something that would take more than curiosity to uncover. The evening sky was painted with shades of orange and pink, but Madison's heart felt heavy, a mix of longing and frustration. She was no closer to understanding the truth, but one thing was clear. Whatever secrets Jake was hiding, they were more than she could have ever imagined. The days that followed were filled with an unsettling silence. Madison continued to visit the garden, but each time she approached Jake, he seemed more distant, more guarded. His eyes, once warm and inviting, now carried an impenetrable sadness that made her question everything she thought she knew about him. She had seen the way he tried to push her away, and it hurt more than she cared to admit. But Madison wasn't one to give up easily, especially when it came to something or someone who had begun to unravel her carefully constructed world. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Jake than the quiet, humble gardener who kept to himself. He was a man who had lived a life that Madison was now desperate to understand, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she felt an undeniable pull to help him. One evening, after dinner, Madison decided to confront Jake again. She had to know the truth, even if it meant pushing him further away. With a steadying breath, she made her way out to the garden, her heart racing with each step. As she reached the familiar path, she saw him in the distance, tending to the roses near the edge of the estate. The soft glow of the evening sun bathed the garden in a golden light, but there was no warmth in Jake's demeanor. "Jake," she called out softly, her voice steady but filled with emotion. Please, talk to me. You don't have to carry this alone." Jake froze at the sound of her voice, his back still turned toward her. The tension in the air was thick, and Madison could see the muscles in his back tighten as he clenched his jaw. For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of the wind rustling the leaves, and Madison felt her heart drop. "I don't want you to get involved, Madison," Jake said quietly, his voice hoarse. "You don't know what it's like to live with a past like mine. It's not something you can just fix." Madison's chest tightened. She couldn't let him walk away again without knowing the truth. "I don't care about your past," she said, her voice firm. "I care about you. Whatever it is, whatever you're hiding, I want to help." Jake's shoulders slumped, and for the first time in days he turned to face her fully. His eyes were filled with so much pain that it took Madison's breath away. Slowly he walked toward her, his movements heavy, as if every step was weighed down by the burden of his secret. "Madison," he began, his voice barely a whisper, "you have no idea what I've done, what I've been through. I'm not the man you think I am. I never was." Madison's heart pounded in her chest as she reached out for him, her hands trembling. "Jake, whatever it is, it doesn't change the way I feel about you." He shook his head, his face contorting in anguish. "It's not about feelings, Madison. It's about who I am and who I was before this." He paused as if gathering the strength to continue before he finally spoke the words that had been buried deep within him for so long. "I'm not just a gardener, Madison. I used to be someone else, someone I'm not proud of." Madison stood frozen, her mind racing. She had no idea what he meant, but she knew that this was just the beginning. Jake's past had caught up with him, and whatever it was going to change everything. The air between Madison and Jake had shifted, a new understanding hanging between them like an unspoken promise. Madison had never seen him so vulnerable, so raw. It was clear that his past wasn't just a shadow, it was a storm that had shaped him into the man he was, and she was determined to understand it, to help him if she could. Jake led her to the farthest corner of the garden, near the old stone bench that sat beneath an ancient oak tree. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the estate. The cool night air wrapped around them like a blanket, adding to the weight of the conversation that was about to unfold. For the first time, Jake looked at her, not with the guarded, distant eyes she had grown used to, but with a deep, painful sincerity. "You don't know what I've done, Madison," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't always this person who works with flowers and plants. I wasn't always this quiet, humble man who just wants to fade into the background." Madison's heart ached as she stepped closer to him, her eyes filled with empathy. She could see the torment in his face, the struggle between the man he had been and the man he was trying to become. "I've made mistakes, big ones," Jake continued, his words coming in fits and starts, as if each one was a confession. "I used to be someone I'm not proud of. I had power, money, everything I thought I wanted, but I lost it all because of my choices, because of the things I did." Madison took a step forward, her hand reaching out to him in a gesture of reassurance. "Jake, you're not the same person anymore. Whatever happened, it doesn't change who you are now." He shook his head, the pain in his eyes deepening. "You don't understand. I was part of something dark. I worked for people who didn't care about anything other than money and control. I hurt people, Madison, people who trusted me. I was a part of a world that doesn't just leave you. You carry it with you forever, and it's not something I can outrun." Madison stood there, her breath catching in her throat as the weight of his confessions sank in. Jake had been a part of something dangerous, something that had left scars far deeper than what could be seen on the surface. She could see now why he had kept his distance, why he was so reluctant to share his past. But despite everything, despite the darkness that seemed to linger in his past, Madison couldn't turn away. She wouldn't. "Jake," she said softly, her voice steady, "you're not that person anymore. You've changed. I can see it in your eyes, in the way you care for the world around you. You've left that life behind." He met her gaze, his eyes searching hers, as if trying to find some assurance that what she was saying was true. "You really think so?" he asked, his voice trembling. Madison nodded, her hand still outstretched toward him. "I do. You found a new purpose, and I believe in you. I believe in who you are now." For a moment, they stood there in silence, the weight of the world between them. Then, slowly, Jake took her hand. The touch was gentle, tentative, but there was something profound in it. It was as if, for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to believe in the possibility of redemption. "I don't know if I deserve your trust," Jake murmured, his voice hoarse, "but I'm willing to try." Madison smiled softly, her heart swelling with something she hadn't expected. Hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy for either of them, but for the first time, she truly believed that they could face it together. The days following their conversation were a quiet tension between them. Though Jake had finally opened up about his past, Madison could tell he was still struggling to fully let go of the weight he carried. It wasn't something that could be healed overnight, not by any means. But there was a shift in the way they interacted, something unspoken, yet undeniable. There was a growing trust between them, a connection that neither of them had anticipated. Madison found herself watching Jake more closely, noticing the subtle ways he now tried to shield her from his past. He was still the same man, kind, strong, and humble, but every so often there would be a fleeting moment where she would see a shadow in his eyes, a reminder of the things he had left behind. One afternoon, as Madison strolled through the garden, lost in thought, she was startled when she heard Jake's voice behind her. "Madison, there's something I need to tell you." She turned to find him standing near the garden's edge, his posture stiff. He looked hesitant, almost like he was trying to build up the courage to speak. Her heart skipped a beat, knowing that what he was about to say could be the key to understanding the man in front of her even more, or it could change everything between them. "What is it, Jake?" she asked softly, taking a step closer to him. Jake glanced around, as if making sure they were alone, before taking a deep breath. "There are things in my past that I haven't told you yet, things that I'm not proud of. I've been running from them for so long that I've forgotten how to face them. But you deserve to know everything." Madison's heart began to race. She had a feeling this wasn't just about the past he had briefly mentioned, but something deeper, something darker. "I'm listening," she said, her voice steady, but her hands clenched slightly at her sides, bracing for whatever was to come. Jake hesitated for a moment, his eyes clouded with something that looked almost like fear. "There's a reason I had to leave my old life behind," he said quietly. "I didn't just walk away from a job or a place. I walked away from people. Dangerous people. I was involved with a criminal organization, Madison, and those people don't just let you go." Madison's breath caught in her throat, the weight of his words pressing down on her. She had feared this, and yet hearing it made everything seem so much more real. "I got out, but they've been looking for me," Jake continued, his voice low, almost as if he was trying to convince himself. "They won't just forget that I left. They'll come after me and anyone I'm close to, that includes you." Madison's mind raced, but she couldn't allow herself to panic. This was the man she cared for, the one who had opened up to her in ways no one else had. She had to trust him, and she had to trust herself. "You're not alone in this, Jake," Madison said, her voice unwavering. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together. You don't have to run anymore. I'm here." For a long moment, Jake didn't respond. He simply looked at her, his eyes filled with something Madison couldn't quite name. Relief, maybe. Or hope. It was a rare emotion on his face, but it was there. Finally, he stepped closer to her, his voice almost a whisper. "Thank you," he said, his gaze softening. "I don't deserve your trust, but I promise I'll do everything to protect you." Madison reached out, her hand brushing his. "We'll protect each other," she said firmly. "No one is going to take you away from me." Jake looked at her, the weight of his past still hanging in the air between them, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could overcome this. Together. The days following their conversation felt like a turning point. For the first time, Madison could see a path forward, not just for Jake, but for them both. She had learned more about his past, about the danger he had once been involved with, and yet she didn't run. She didn't pull away. Instead, she stayed, stood beside him, ready to face whatever came next. There was no fear in her heart, only determination. Jake, for his part, was still struggling with the weight of his past, but something had shifted within him. The shadows that had clouded his eyes were starting to lift, replaced by a glimmer of hope, a hope he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. He had a chance now, a real chance, to build something new with Madison, and for the first time he believed it could be possible. The danger still loomed, of course. Jake knew that leaving the life he had led behind wasn't going to be simple. The people he had once worked for wouldn't just forget him. He had to be ready. But with Madison at his side, he felt stronger, more capable of facing whatever came their way. She had shown him what trust looked like, what love felt like, and he wasn't about to lose that. Not now. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a soft glow over the garden, Madison and Jake sat side by side on the bench where they had shared their first real conversation. The air was cool, but the warmth between them was undeniable. Madison could feel the tension in Jake's shoulders easing, the weight lifting from his chest as they shared a peaceful silence. "Jake," Madison said softly, breaking the quiet. "What do you want now? What's next for you?" Jake turned to look at her, his expression softening as he met her gaze. "I want to build a life, a real life. I want to be someone who's not running from his past anymore." Madison smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "And you'll have that. You've already started. You're not alone anymore. We'll figure it out together." Jake took her hand in his fingers intertwining with hers. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. There was so much uncertainty ahead, but one thing was clear: they had each other. "I don't know how I got so lucky to find you," Jake murmured, his voice filled with gratitude. Madison chuckled softly. "Maybe we were meant to find each other. Maybe all of this, the past, the struggles, the pain, it was all leading us here." They sat there for a while longer, the quiet hum of the garden around them, the evening sky darkening above. The future was still unknown, but for the first time it didn't seem as daunting. With each other they could face whatever challenges came their way. In that moment, as the last of the day's light faded away, Jake realized that he didn't need to keep running anymore. He had found something worth staying for, and that was enough.